Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the 2025 USC Sol Price School of Public Policy Commencement Ceremony. I'm Julie Kim, Assistant Dean for Student Affairs, and I have the pleasure and honor to introduce you to our proud graduates as they enter the auditorium. Please rise and welcome the class of 2025. Sydney Yu, graduate of the Bachelor of Science in Urban Studies and Planning and the Price School's valedictorian, is leading our dean down the right side of the center aisle. She is also recognized as a USC Stephen and Catherine Sample Renaissance Scholar, a Global Scholar, and a recipient of the Dean's Senior Merit Award. The faculty are now entering the venue. Dean Christopher Boone and our commencement keynote speaker, Dr. Cecilia Elena Rouse, President of the Brookings Institution, are leading the faculty down the right side of the center aisle. Vice Dean of Community Dialogue and Engagement and Faculty Marshal LaVonna Lewis is leading the faculty down the left side of the center aisle. Graduates are now entering the auditorium. They are led by Doctor of Philosophy and Public Policy and Management graduate, Virod Argwal, recipient of the Henry Reining Jr. Best Dissertation Award, as well as the Doctor of Philosophy and Urban Planning and Development graduate, Naomi Sula Lee. Doctor of Policy Planning and Development graduates, led by Catherine Cole, concludes the doctoral procession. The master's graduates are now entering the auditorium and are proceeding down the center aisle. Leading the procession are the Master of International Public Policy and Management graduates. They're led by Jo Chen Lee and Kazabkhan Tazikhan, both who are IPAM student senators and recipients of the Dr. Joyce Mann Memorial Award for Global Leadership. The Master of Nonprofit Leadership and Management graduates follow, led by Hendrika Amelia, a Price Student Ambassador, and Corin Birch, recipient of the Dean's Certificate of Merit and a Price Student Ambassador. Now entering the auditorium are the Dollinger Master of Real Estate graduates. They're led by Andrea Escalante, recipient of the 2025 California Home Building Foundation Scholarship and the USC Staff Assembly Scholarship, and Jonathan Moftakar, recipient of the 2024 NAIOP Real Estate Award, 2025 Holland & Knight Joint Venture Award, Dollinger Master of Real Estate Program Distinction Award in memory of Professor Rina Sivitanithu. Continuing the procession are the Master of Urban Planning graduates, led by Caleb Pog, Graduate Student Government Senator and the Finance Director of the Associated Students of Planning, and Fanny O. Yang, Co-Chair of the Associated Students of Planning and recipient of the Master of Urban Planning Academic Achievement Award and Meritorious Award. The Master of Health Administration graduates are now entering the auditorium. They're led by Michelle Vardapatayan, President of the Student Health Council, recipient of the MHA Outstanding Student Award in Leadership, and Gianna Marino, Co-President of the Upsilon Phi Delta Honor Society, recipient of the MHA Outstanding Student Award in Advocacy and Dean's Certificate of Merit. The Executive Master of Health Administration graduates follow, led by Wendy Wang and Siraj Edin Rahima. The Master of Public Policy graduates follow, led by Elijah Dow, who is a 2025 graduate student speaker, co-president of the Graduate Policy and Administration Community, co-president of the Mentorship for an Accessible Price, and the recipient of the Jane Pisano Award. Elijah is joined by Bailey Shen, Vice President of the Homeland Security Student Organization and a Price Student Ambassador. The Master of Public Administration graduates conclude the Master's procession. They are led by Arai Kuderbayava, Graduate Student Government Senator and Price Student Ambassador, joined by Manny Munoz, Co-President of the Mentorship for an Accessible Price, Vice President of the Price Latinx Student Association, and Norman Topping Scholar. The undergrads are now entering the auditorium. The Bachelor of Science in Urban Studies and Planning graduates are led by Clarissa Avalos, a Price Student Ambassador and recipient of the Dean Senior Merit Award, and she is joined by Andrew McNeil, recipient of the Dean Senior Merit Award. Bachelor of Science in Public Policy graduates follow, led by Kyle Ching, a presidential scholar who serves as a co-president of the Public Policy Undergraduate Student Organization, event director of the Nikkei Student Union, and recipient of the Dean Senior Merit Award. He is joined by Stephanie Herrera, the recipient of the Emery E. Olson Award, Dean Senior Merit Award, vice president of the Price Latinx Student Association, and a Price Student Ambassador. Concluding the procession are the Bachelor of Science in Real Estate Development graduates, led by Sophia Lee and Avery Roskwitowski. They serve as co-presidents of the Trojan Real Estate Association and are recipients of the Dean Senior Merit Award. Please be seated and help me welcome to the stage Christopher G. Boone, the USC Price School's Dean and the C. Irwin and Ione L. Piper Chair.
All right, you know how this begins. Congratulations to the class of 2025. Welcome to your commencement, and welcome to your very enthusiastic family and friends. We've gathered to celebrate the accomplishments of this astounding class. So please join me in thanking all of our exceptional faculty and staff who worked so hard to make this celebration possible. Thank you. So, one thing we have in common, you and I are both embarking on new journeys. You're about to begin an exciting new chapter in life. So am I, having arrived at the Price School just a little more than 4 months ago. I won't say what day that was, but the next day was not so great. But in the short time that I've been here, I've had the good fortune to meet many of you during our monthly get-togethers, and I've been impressed, to say the least. You're inquisitive, thoughtful, ambitious, and you embody the Price School's mission, which is right up there on the sign behind me, to improve the lives of people and communities around the globe. So at a time when the world seems to be coming apart at the seams, you give all of us hope that we can stitch things back together again. I know that's a lot to expect of you, maybe too much, in fact, but you can choose to accept the trials that lie ahead as a blessing. I hope that you do, and not as a burden. As the philosopher John Campbell once wrote, participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. Those sorrows will feel overwhelming at times. You may want to say, the heck with it. I'm going to become a scuba instructor in Barbados. That might be your choice. But, as you found during your time at the Price School, struggle is its own reward. We learn by stretching ourselves and testing our limits. You learned from some of the best, no, scratch that, the best faculty in the world. But their lessons weren't always easy. Their assignments required the best of you. And apparently a lot of coffee, which I think many of you drank today, or something else. I won't remark on that. But because you didn't give up, because you dug in, you're now graduating from one of the best, scratch that, the best public policy schools in the nation. So I know you just did it, but I want you to do it again. Please give yourselves a huge round of applause. So if you take this same spirit with you into the next chapter of your lives, I guarantee you will not only succeed, you will lead a life of profound purpose, a life that will give you its greatest reward, knowing that you left the world a little better off. And now, I would like our graduating students to rise. Thankfully, you all know how to follow instructions. That was great. So, graduates, you've demonstrated your commitment to these universal ideals. Thus, here's where it gets official. By the authority vested in me by the U.S. Board of Trustees and President, I hereby confer upon each of you the degree or certificate for which you have been recommended by the faculty with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities related to them. As evidence of these degrees and certificates, I shall direct that an appropriate diploma of the University of Southern California be presented to each of you, signed by its officers and embossed with the seal of the university. Congratulations, class of 2025! All right, now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our fabulous keynote speaker. Dr. Cecilia Elena Rouse is, without exaggeration, one of the world's most foremost public policy experts. We are honored and grateful to have her as our speaker. We owe a special thanks to our distinguished professor, Jen Giuliano, for having invited Dr. Rouse to speak today. Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. Dr. Rouse is a labor economist by training, currently serves as the president of the Brookings Institution, one of the most respected policy think tanks. She's also the Katzman Ernst Professor in Economics and Education at Princeton University School of Public and International Affairs, where she also served as dean from 2012 to 2021. Dr. Rouse took a leave from academia from 2021 to 2023 when she served as chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. Big job. The council, as you may recall, offers the president objective economic advice. Dr. Rouse also served as a member of the Council of Economic Advisors from 2009 to 2011, and from 1998 to 1999 as special assistant to the president of the National Economic Council. She's founding director of the Princeton Education Research Section and a member of the American Philosophical Society, the National Academy of Education, and the National Academy of Sciences. I could go on. Her list of achievements is almost endless, but I'll make the smarter choice and turn the podium over to Dr. Rouse. Dr. Rouse, please.
Thank you, Dean Boone, for that very kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. To the class of 2025, congratulations. I am truly honored to be here celebrating with you today. Now, I hear some of you kicked off the celebrations maybe a bit early with a fortifying breakfast at the 9-0. I can only imagine that I only hope that my speech will not be just as intoxicating, and it certainly won't leave your head pounding. More seriously, class of 2025, all 600 plus of you, you are the newest chapter in the history of the USC Price School of Public Policy. That story began in 1932, when 3 students earned the school's first ever undergraduate degrees. So let me tell you this. That small but mighty class didn't have it easy. When they received their diplomas, the stock market plummeted, tariffs on taxable imports skyrocketed to 60%, and as jobs vanished during the Great Depression, the US government drove around 1 million people of Mexican descent out of the country, over half of whom were American-born. Sound somewhat familiar? It's human nature to feel that what we're living through is somehow unprecedented, but history tells us otherwise. Every generation has faced its challenges. The class of 1932 confronted economic disorder with similarity to what we're experiencing today. In 1962, students graduated under the looming threat of nuclear war. In 1992, the Bosnian War erupted, as did riots right here in Los Angeles. The truth is, there's never been a graduating class of USC Price that didn't walk into fear, that wasn't forced to face some kind of uncertainty. No one gets a free pass through the hard stuff. But you wouldn't be sitting here today if you were expecting an easy pass. After all, this is a public policy school. So I think it's fair to say a lot of you applied here because you wanted to make a difference. Well, the good news is, there's definitely a difference to be made. Like every graduating class before you, the world's problems are your purpose, the world's cruelties, your call to action. For me, that call came through economics. Over the past 30 years, I've investigated questions in labor economics at Princeton, did 3 White House tours, including during the Great Recession and the COVID-19 pandemic, and now I lead a think tank dedicated to addressing societal challenges. As I've personally experienced, a career in public policy is not an easy one. It requires learning how to navigate hard times and how to sustain yourself through them. So from my time in academia, public service, and now the civil sector, here are my top 3 lessons. 1, it takes an idea to beat an idea. 2, there are only 24 hours in the day. And 3, Always question inertia. So let's start with the first lesson. First, like in 1932, we're living through a fraught economic moment. For many Americans, the dream of upward mobility seems increasingly out of reach. The system seems rigged and everyday life has become too expensive. Consider a basic staple, a carton of eggs that cost $1.70 in 2018 now sells for about $6.20 today. The median price of a new home has soared past $400,000, and that's median, not luxury. And renters don't have it easy either. Nearly half spend more than 30% of their income on housing, a level considered financially unsustainable. Oh, and if you want to start a family, it now costs around $300,000 to raise a child to age 18, and that doesn't include the college tuition. Globally, most people now believe the next generation will be worse off than their parents. This growing sense of unfairness, that financial stability once achievable through hard work is slipping away, is one of the defining challenges of our time. The federal administration is trying to meet this challenge with new policy shifts in immigration, taxation, and tariffs. You might disagree with their approach. That's not only acceptable, that's essential. Healthy democracies depend on debate, on competing visions and differing perspectives. But no one is inspired to rally around a complaint. Screaming, "What they're doing sucks," is not a strategy. It's a dead end. It sucks the air out of the room and inspiration out of forward movement. If you really want to move the needle on today's issues, you have to offer an alternative. Your alternative may not be the ultimate solution, but it could spark conversation that generates momentum. As I said, it takes an idea to beat an idea. And with your world-class education from USC Price, I am sure you can come up with a few interesting ones, whether it's to fight economic insecurity, the housing crisis, the rising cost of childcare, or whatever issue you are most interested in. Okay, on to my second lesson. There are only 24 hours in a day. Deceptively simple, but inescapably true. We think that with ever-improving technology like ChatGPT or the illusion of multitasking, we can somehow beat time. But time is the hardest and most intractable of all constraints. And this constraint forces us all to make decisions, identify our highest priorities, do them well, and learn to give up things when we have to. I, for example, miss diving into all-consuming research. But at Brookings, my focus is on leading the institution because there are only 24 hours in a day. And I hope you will waste some of them. Nap a few hours away on the couch, stay up late, call your best friend, and always order dessert, especially if it involves chocolate. There are only 24 hours in a day for your work, yes, but also for you. And please don't forget that. You can't help others if you're winded yourself. Now my final lesson. Always question inertia. In physics, inertia is the tendency to keep doing exactly what you're doing unless an outside force intervenes. If we're not careful, life can work out the same way. So graduation ceremonies are one of the rare moments in life when society actually encourages you to follow your passions. Take risks. Embrace failure. If you started an internship tomorrow, you would likely be celebrated. But fast forward 10 or 20 years. You spent decades in finance, and suddenly you want to walk away. Maybe take an internship in a different field instead. Some people might smile and say, "Hey, good luck." Others might raise an eyebrow, roll their eyes, stifle a laugh. But please do it anyway. Their career path you're starting today might be the one you stay on for a lifetime, or not. Either way, each step of the way, I encourage you to question inertia. Not just at your graduation ceremony, but throughout your life. Make it a habit to ask yourself, am I spending my time on what truly matters to me, or just following what I think I'm supposed to do? The so-called logical next step. In my own career, rather than sticking to a rigid plan, when faced with a choice, I've generally selected the job that sounded the most interesting and challenging at the time, because it's never too late to question inertia, and it can be fulfilling to change direction. That's how I ended up as president of Brookings and why I'm here with you today. Not such a bad gig. But before I close, class of 2025, the class of 1932 has a final lesson, and they're insistent that I pass it along to you. 1932 was a year of crisis for our country, but it was also a precipice of possibility, a moment when ideas once dismissed as unrealistic suddenly became achievable. In 1933, the New Deal was born, radically expanding the role of the federal government in economic and social affairs. In 1935, the Social Security Act was signed. It's commonplace now, but at the time it was revolutionary. And also in the 1930s, prohibition came to an end, for which the 9-0 is most grateful. So, class of 2025, like the class of 1932, you're stepping into a world with no shortage of challenges. But challenges means there's work to be done, new ideas to be generated and debated, and with that, the chance to have a hand in shaping our collective future. I am confident that all 600 plus of you will make a difference, just like the USC Price graduates before you, each facing their own iteration of an uncertain world. I cannot wait to see what you will do next. Thank you, USC Price, for having me. And to the class of 2025, congratulations once again, and fight on.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. I now have the honor and pleasure of introducing the Price School valedictorian, Sydney Yu. You all know Sydney. Sydney's graduating with you today with a bachelor's in urban studies and planning and with a minor in risk management. Notice how carefully she walked up that ramp, for instance. Okay, so instilled with the strong work ethic by her parents, Sydney went well beyond requirements when she wrote a report for the New York Times Square Alliance, a business improvement district, and going off to New York this fall. That was 2 years ago during a summer internship. Insights from this report were so useful that the agency decided to make them a template for future fellowship work and for how the agency tracks and reports retail trends. She's also been an intern at the National Science Foundation, an undergraduate teaching assistant, and a section editor of a college magazine. She was a program coordinator for a USC initiative funding artwork about climate change. Clearly someone who will help stitch our world back together. Please join me in welcoming Sydney Yu, the Price School's 2025 valedictorian.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is truly a momentous occasion. And yet, despite its significance, I know today likely snuck up on many of us. Amid the whirlwind of finals season, as well as the constant stress of what exactly comes next, there was little time to sit and simply celebrate all that we've accomplished. But we made it. Graduates, we made it through countless tests, papers, and perhaps an all-nighter or two. Parents, you braved long travel days and even LA traffic to be here, a feat equally worthy of applause. For my senior studio class, I had the pleasure of learning from Price alum and professor Lauren Kwan Madrid, co-founder of People's Yoga, the first yoga studio in East Los Angeles. Professor Kwan Madrid instilled in us the importance of self-care and mindfulness, and in the spirit of her teaching, I invite you all to join me in a collective breath. Close your eyes if you'd like, and just breathe in, acknowledging all the work that you have put in to make this moment possible. Breathe out, letting go of all the stressors, like bright space, and for me, this speech, that you will hopefully never have to think about again. But hold on to your strength and excitement, and know that we, the class of 2025, are ready to face our next chapters. I won't deny that the future is scary. Particularly as policy school graduates, we cannot ignore that long-standing American institutions and precedents suddenly seem uncertain, jeopardizing the aspirations of our fellow graduates, as well as lives built by immigrants throughout our country. However, this graduating class has seen no lack of unprecedented times, beginning college during a pandemic and grappling just months ago with the impact of the Palisades and Altadena fires on our community members and loved ones. Amid such challenges, Price has always provided a path forward. In the aftermath of the fires, Price faculty helped convene experts on the Project Recovery Roadmap, while Price students jumped into relief efforts as Bonet Fellows to the County Board of Supervisors. I'm proud to say that this year's senior class gift will contribute to the Trojan Family LA Wildfire Relief Fund, helping support USC faculty, staff, and students who have been impacted by the fires. As Los Angeles recovers, and our world continues to face injustices and tragedies, I am confident that Price graduates will continue to create purposeful paths forward. We are equipped with the skills to plan and develop sustainable and equitable built environments, or craft and implement effective public policy. Most importantly, we have had the opportunity to collaborate across Price's 3 disciplines, learning from each other's disparate experiences, approaches, and perspectives. As one of 21 undergraduate urban planning students in this year's graduating class, I was fortunate enough to take many classes across Price's academic spectrum. I will admit, I was nervous to take my first real estate development class, scared that they would just be able to tell that I didn't know what a pro forma was. What I quickly realized is that we are all Price students driven to create better futures. We are all kind classmates with the willingness to take in new perspectives that strengthens our collective learning and our community. We have all been fortunate to learn from amazing Price faculty and staff, who I would like to take a moment to thank, especially Professor David Sloan, who has been an invaluable mentor throughout writing this speech. Price colleagues will continue to be important collaborators and friends as we forge new paths forward. As we grow from students into future leaders and change makers, our interdisciplinary perspectives and our service to others will guide us toward impactful legacies. I look forward to keeping up with the amazing work that is to come from our graduating class. I'd like to leave you with a statement that my professor Ward Ching closes class with every week, a phrase that has greatly influenced my approach to both public service and postgraduate life. Take care of yourselves, and if you get the chance, take care of somebody else. Thank you and congratulations to the class of 2025.
Thank you, Sydney. Like our valedictorian, public service was deeply ingrained in our graduate speaker long before he came to the USC Price School. Elijah Dow grew up in Sandy, Utah, not far from Salt Lake City. He was only 19 when he realized that his city's practice of shipping people experiencing homelessness to a faraway town was not a viable solution. So Elijah volunteered at a homeless shelter to learn more. He became a leader in the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness, where he surveyed more than 300 people without housing and presented his findings to the city. But he wanted to know more, so he came to the Price School. Good choice. Where he will graduate today with a Master in Public Policy, and where he spent a good deal of his time feeding his curiosity at the Homelessness Policy Research Institute. We're likely to hear a good deal more about Elijah because he plans to run for elected office one day, so get your votes in. He wants to do that so he can apply what he's learned to improving the quality of life for his community, and maybe for one day, all of ours as well. So please welcome Elijah Dow to the podium.
Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, USC Price, class of 2025. It's a pleasure to be here. It's remarkable how times like this arrive all at once and then ask us to slow down. This isn't just a ceremony, it's a rare chance to recognize the weight of this moment and to honor what it took to get here. Before anything else, I want to say thank you to the professors who challenged us to think critically and to lead with integrity, to the staff whose steady work created the conditions for our growth, often without the recognition they deserve, to the family and friends who stood beside us. Thank you for your patience, your encouragement, and your unwavering belief that we'd make it to this stage. This degree may have our names on it, but it belongs to every hand that lifted us up along the way. To my classmates, thank you, not just for your contributions at the Trojan Network, but for the kind of people you chose to be during your time here at Price. You remind me that community isn't declared, it's demonstrated. It's built through presence, in the way you extended grace, not for recognition, but because it's what you'd hope someone would do for you. You made this a space for others to speak from experience, not just expertise, and that matters. And in the quiet ways you showed up, for each other, for your communities, you didn't wait for that permission to lead. When I committed to USC Price 2 years ago, I told my family I would make the most of it. I thought that meant mastering the coursework, but what changed me most wasn't learning how systems work, it was understanding why people fight to change them, and it was you who taught me that. Each person here carries a story entirely their own, and I've been shaped by your stories and your purpose in ways I never could have imagined. Each story reminded me that what this work is really for. Behind each story is a lived experience, something that hurt, something that inspired, something that called you to act. Being surrounded by that kind of purpose changed how I think, how I lead, and how I hope to show up in this world. We didn't come to Price just to learn policy. We came to understand what it means to shape it, to question it, and to live with the responsibility that comes with both. The lessons that stayed weren't the ones we turned in, they were the ones we wrestled with, the ones that made us uncomfortable, that made us ask better questions, ask more questions, be more curious. That's what Price taught me. To stay curious, even when it's easier not to be. To sit with uncertainty, not as a failure, but as the beginning of something honest. Because in LA, you can't turn a corner without understanding the impacts of policy and the importance of community. Here, policy is not theoretical, it's not neutral. Policy is all around us, in housing, in health, in history, in who is heard and who is not. Because that truth demands more than knowledge, it demands that this work be lived. Policy is conflict, and it's supposed to be. It's where values meet, where visions clash, where compromise is messy, but necessary. We weren't trained to avoid conflict. We were trained to enter it with clarity and conviction. We learned that disagreement isn't a weakness, it's a sign that we're engaged. It's a beautiful thing to have these different opinions, because real leadership isn't about being right, it's about being responsible. It's about listening well, responding with care, and knowing when to challenge the silence in the room. And always understanding the notion that every policy has a person affected by it, a story that deserves to be heard, a consequence. Let us never forget that. Many of us arrived here at Price full of hope and full of urgency. But hope is not a guarantee, it's a discipline. It's what you practice when you're sitting in a city council meeting at 9 p.m. and there are no cameras, no applause, but the work still matters. It's what you practice when a community invites you in, not because you have the answers, but because you're willing to listen. And through years of relentless learning, we discovered it's not about having the perfect answers. It's about being willing to sit with the hard questions over and over again and keep on choosing to act. We learned that institutions don't change because of degrees or job titles. They change because of the courage. Because someone decided to speak up, show up, and build institutions worthy of the people they are meant to serve. Because someone somewhere believed that change was possible and was bold enough to begin. We are those someones already. Let this not be the end of our education, but the beginning of our impact. So let's leave here not with answers, but with questions bold enough to change everything. If policy is how we shape the world, then let ours be shaped with courage, because we are not waiting for permission to lead. We are those someones now. Congratulations, USC Price Class of 2025. Thank you, and fight on.
Thank you, Sydney and Elijah. Now is the time to recognize and celebrate each graduating student. We will call up graduates individually for the presentation of the diplomas. Our graduates will receive ceremonial diploma covers, and the official diplomas will be mailed in 4 to 6 weeks. We will begin with the Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Policy Planning and Development candidates, who will be hooded by their dissertation chairs, then follow with diploma presentations to the master's candidates, and conclude with the undergraduate candidates. Graduates, once you have received your diplomas, we kindly ask that you return to your seats until all of your fellow graduates have received their diplomas. This will ensure that all graduates are honored. Parents and guests, professional photographers are present and will take pictures of the graduates during the diploma presentation. Information on ordering pictures will be sent to each graduate after the ceremony. Please do not crowd the aisles or the area in front of the stage to take pictures of your graduate. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management and Doctor of Philosophy in Urban Planning and Development degrees. Associate Professor and Director of the PhD programs, John Romley will join Dean Boone.
Virat Agarwal, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, The Good and the Bad of Pandemic Era Public Policy. Dissertation Chair, Dr. Niraj Sood. Jordy David Coutine, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, Analyzing the Spatial Distribution of Camping Ban Enforcement in Los Angeles under 3 governance regimes. Dissertation Chair, Dr. Juliet Musso. Jamie Estrada Miller, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, Understanding the Alignment of California High School Graduation Requirements and 4-year university eligibility at the local level. Dissertation Chair, Dr. Pam McCann. Jose Juan Scott III, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, An Investigation of Behavioral and Structural Impacts of Poverty and Economic Insecurity in Los Angeles County. Dissertation Chair, Dr. Wandy Brune de Brune. Kenyoung Eli Lee, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, 3 essays on the impact of federal agency reputation on retention and recruitment at the federal labor market. Dissertation Chair, Dr. William Rush. Philip Lee, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, The Political Economy of Climate Change, Essays on Maritime and Land-Based Transport and Clean Technology. Dissertation Chair, Dr. Antonio Bento. Lee Jong Lu, Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy and Management. Dissertation title, 3 essays on the effects of housing policies on housing markets and neighborhood outcomes. Dissertation chair, Dr. Richard Green. Naomi Sula Lee, Doctor of Philosophy in Urban Planning and Development. Dissertation title, New Mobilities and Travel Behavior. Dissertation chair, Dr. Marlon Burnett. Jae Hyun Ha, Doctor of Philosophy in Urban Planning and Development. Dissertation title, 3 essays on accessibility, ICT, and travel behavior. Dissertation chair, Dr. Jen Giuliano. James Gross, Doctor of Philosophy in Urban Planning and Development. Dissertation title, Urban Vitality or Urban Intensity. 3 essays on the empirical evaluation of urban vitality. Dissertation chair, Dr. Marlon Burnett. Eli June, dissertation title, Remote Work, the Great Divide in the Public Sector. Dissertation, advisor, Dr. Bill Resch. Benjamin Toney, Doctor of Philosophy in Urban Planning and Development. Dissertation title, Community Benefits and Community Costs, Frameworks for Equitable Development in Los Angeles. Dissertation chair, Dr. Lisa Schweitzer.
Congratulations to the Doctor of Philosophy graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Doctor of Policy Planning and Development degree. Associate Professor Vice Dean for Graduate Programs and MPA Program Director Juliet Musso will join Dean Boone.
Catherine Martha Cole, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development. Dissertation title, Resident Knowledge, Engagement, and Participation in Homeowners Associations, a case study of the Terraces HOA in Southern California. Dissertation chair, Dr. Bill Leach. Christina Paddock, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development. Dissertation title, Who Will Watch My Children? How Family and Work Structures Shape Low-Income Single Mothers' Childcare Use in Los Angeles. Dissertation chair, Dr. Christine Beckman. Sarah Straubel, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development. Dissertation title, Good Intentions Are Not Enough, Exploring Implicit Racial Bias in Philanthropy. Dissertation chair, Dr. Nicole Esparza. Candice Francesca House Teixeira, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development. Dissertation title, Continuing Engineering Education, Creating a Framework from Shared Experiences in Developing, Offering, and Participating in Continuing Education Programs in the Field of Engineering. Dissertation chair, Dr. James Moore. Luis Gutierrez, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development, dissertation title, Organizational Dimensions of Energy Justice, Affordable Energy Program Implementation in California's San Joaquin Valley. Dissertation chair, Dr. Annette Kim. Sevan Ben Lian, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development, dissertation title, Potential Benefits of Cross-Laminated Timber Building Construction, a Social Cognitive Perspective. Dissertation chair, Dr. Peter Robertson. Ben Kaolin, Doctor of Policy Planning and Development, dissertation title, Operationalizing Violence Prevention in Radicalized Military Service Members and Veterans. Dissertation chair, Dr. Detloff von Winterfeld.
Congratulations to the Doctor of Policy Planning and Development graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Master of International Public Policy and Management degree. Professor of Teaching and Program Director Reem Kaki will join Dean Boone.
Kasimhan Permetchin Tajihan.
Raw Jane Lee.
Mulder Tapeva.
Kun Ming Du.
Janelle Rispikova.
Mo Yu Su.
Udaya Bashkar Jaki.
Purple Huang.
Aidos Tolep-Bergenov.
Jasmine Cheng.
Sanat Sharif.
Qing Zhao Zheng.
Yeya Nordurem Hamze.
Murat Keles.
Jungyoung Park.
Damite Salivinova.
Hyuntae Kim.
Ru Rong Wang.
Congratulations to the Master of International Public Policy and Management graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Master of Nonprofit Leadership and Management degree. Program Director Regina Birdsell will join Dean Boone.
Hendrika Mycelin Amelia.
Corinne Birch.
Journey Ariana Winder.
Alistair Campbell.
Juri Jung.
Lorne Benjamin Green.
David E. Oriana.
Amy Wills.
Cao Chen.
Congratulations to the Master of Nonprofit Leadership and Management graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Dollinger Master of Real Estate Development degree. Professor and Chair of the Wilbur H. Smith III Department of Real Estate Development and Director and Chair of the USC Lusk Center for Real Estate, Richard Green, will join Dean Boone.
Andrea Sons Escalante.
Jonathan Moftkar.
Aries Wang.
Robert Zachary Schmerling.
Celine Guan Pong.
Jack Seltzer.
Julian David Sade.
Mario Quintaharo.
Juan Alberto Contreras.
Christopher Wong.
Galen Kirkopel.
Ching Fong Sun.
Aaron Tversky.
Austin Risley.
Ramsey Casey.
Stephen John Gardner.
Alexandria Gordon.
Noah Nordquist.
Sophia Shaheen.
Stephen Tresnewski.
Jasper Joseph.
Sunjeev Hartmeyer.
Viridiana Quiroz.
Drew Rothschall.
Jason Selmeyer.
Dwight Pritchett.
Jake Douglas. Ryan Knowles.
Austin Joseph Adams.
William McNulty.
Matthew Schwartz.
Jack Rogers.
David Shelley. Derek Hunter. Jake Harris.
Congratulations to the Dollinger Master of Real Estate Development graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Master of Urban Planning degree. Professor and Chair of the Department of Urban Planning and Spatial Analysis, David Sloan, will join Dean Boone.
Caleb Pack.
Lo Fan Fanny O Yang.
Sean Robert Min.
Sha Yu Gao.
Jocelyn Enriquez Reyes.
Qi Yan Gao.
Isai Gustavo Bribresca.
Zoeli Ortiz.
Charvari Rajwade.
Yun Shi Lo.
Sophia Anna Larson Cesar.
Amelia Mayer.
Tiana Monique Anderson.
Christine Serbach.
Nathaniel Gunderson.
Michael Marchak.
Emily Montserrat Sanchez.
Della Heschmeyer.
Sophia Piedrahita.
Samuel Sutton.
Ashley Espinosa.
Jackson Cipriano.
Megan Keeley Wong.
Ariane Benet.
Carla Cacaceres Perez.
Gavin Derleth.
Sarah Back.
Sophia Knoppertz.
Deming Len.
Sydney Ermachev.
Radwan Fajira.
Lawrence Wu. Siwon Chen. Ye Wong. Tariq Wasim Fadil Al-Wahani.
Congratulations to the Master of Urban Planning graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Master of Health Administration degree. Professor and Interim Chair of the Department of Health Policy and Management, Neeraj Sood will join Dean Boone.
Gianna Marino.
Michelle Vardapanyan.
Liat Kohanzadeh.
Audrey Dawoodi.
Simona Simonieva.
Abel Satagayan.
Morgan Ma.
Anna Adamian.
Palak Verma.
Katrina Shervanian.
Melanie Crystal Oliva.
Genesis Ramirez.
John Christopher Pace.
On to Wen.
Max Estabrook.
Vivian Trin.
Christian Herrera.
Benjamin Sorgi.
Diana Avila.
Armuhan Mastan.
Nina Lynn Nguyen.
Sukaina Al-Saleh.
Sarah Catalina Cardenas.
Jasmine Kwan.
Neha Usruf.
Hoi Yan Wong.
Basil Rafat Bouchier.
Adana Kabedi.
Zainab Hassan Mohammed.
Emily Perun.
Isabella Castro Angabong.
Natalie Alyssa Olivares.
Deja Willingham.
Sarah El Kahili.
Kellen Elizabeth Rogers.
Joan Kim.
Nicholas Monroe.
Erin Huang.
Eileen Joe.
Landon Hobbs.
Ting Hong.
Jessica Hui. Sarah Mita.
Siraj Mohammed. My bad.
Sanaya Jayesh Bhatt.
Congratulations to the Master of Health Administration graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Executive Master of Health Administration degree. Michael Harris, Professor of Teaching and the Executive Director of the Master of Health Administration, will join Dean Boone.
Siraj Mohammed Rahima.
Wendy Huang.
Aaron Lee Harden.
Peter Gazainian.
Bridget R. Briggs, MD.
Drusilla Aceves.
Benito Del Toro.
Dr. Jenny Luna.
Sudeep Taksali.
Iram Mahmood.
Clementino Otuo Ogundinimo.
Stephanie Anderson.
David Sunwin Cheng.
Christopher Robert Smith.
David Hong.
Lindsay Paroli Yanamara.
Matthew Dyer.
Anthony Michael Vega.
Jessica Benitez.
Joshua Alberto Unas.
Nancy Padron.
Tyler Lloyd.
Rita Garabedian.
Lucia Reyes.
Congratulations to the Executive Master of Health Administration graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Master of Public Policy degree. Professor of Teaching and Program Director Mark Phillips will join Dean Boone.
Elijah Dow.
Bailey Shen.
Hadir Ali Uzab.
Jeffrey Parker Schmel.
Ryan Condinza.
Gerson Armado Montes.
Caroline Alina Ganberry.
Yi Sean Brucey Cho.
Derek Amboir Zumzadeh.
Ian Robert Ayers.
Duncan Law.
Amber Justine Acosta.
Yehuda Benjamin Patas.
AJ Julian Lucas.
Evelyn Marquez.
Haoyan Yu.
Yolanda Carrion.
Rune Liu.
Wee Ho.
Taline Balian.
Jesus Benavides.
Madi Putri Wiantarian.
Candice Zhang.
Jing Han Zhang.
Qishan Xiang.
Shi Tong Lu.
Li Hanju.
Liang Xuan.
Zukai Zhang.
Xinwei Chai.
Hong Yu Qian.
Lin Meng.
Wei Hong Zhang.
Young Jun Chao.
Nathaniel Gunderson.
Yifei Ouyang.
Caleb Pack.
Yuxi Chung.
Congratulations to the Master of Public Policy graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Master of Public Administration degree. Associate Professor, Vice Dean for Graduate Programs and MPA Program Director Juliet Musso and MPA Online Program Coordinator Dora Kingsley-Vertenton will present the degrees.
Arai Kuderbayeva.
Manuel Jesus Munoz.
Celso Campoverde.
Adriana Morales.
Junwei Zhao.
Giselle Jasmine Melendez Cruz.
Shi J.
Melanie Omida.
Xingji Gong.
Emily Vargas.
Wohao Gaspard Wu.
Damien Ethan Wafa.
Ximin Zhang.
Melissa Beatriz Ayala.
Yimei Tian.
JC Lynn Carter.
Zekyu Wong.
Jacob Kyle Carter.
Heyman Lee.
Ashley Nicole Jones.
Taeyoung Kim.
Daniel Lucero.
Antoinette Marie Cobb.
Gray Mandabak.
Alicia Catherine Tenzer.
Nicole Mays.
Abel Salvador Flores.
Aaron Berry.
Silo Frausto Lupo.
Irene Renee O'Neill.
Addison Gregory.
Maritza Abarca Salas.
Obir Kazi.
Lisette Santana Sotelo.
Brianna Nicole Roper.
Zoe Wamboi Maina.
Tasmin Choudhury.
Carlin Dubon.
Kiana Caitlin Boyette.
Robert Henry Reyna.
Bhavini Prasad.
Andrew Padilla.
Valerie Kuo.
Adam Michael Weiss.
Ivana Karastayeva.
Samantha Seagraves.
Kisin Chen.
Let's go!
Lourdes Lizette Alvarez.
Shaylee Gua.
Athena Nora Lazos.
Robbie Gill.
Carly Ann Dara.
Karen Itzel Avila.
Jared Cornell.
Jose Manuel Ayon.
Annette Baldwin.
Eric Salvador Paredes.
Oksana Tikova.
Lucy Trulook Kramer.
Lara Devia.
Fatima Carolina Pinaflor.
Kristen Tanner.
Alexander Davidson Park.
Ashley Moore.
Violet Yahan Shi.
Chelsea Clements.
Olivia Hu.
Garrett Collier.
Karina Shu.
Luis Fernando Rubalcava.
Xian Ying Zhong.
Spencer Daniel O'Hara.
Jin Shi Young.
Caitlin Ross.
Chi Hong Zhou.
Montserrat Coria.
Jashin Har.
Sherelle Philomohala.
Jada Shu.
Chloe Alexandria Shin.
Zinyu Loop.
Natalie Letchworth.
Wei Jing Wang.
Michael Patrick McCard II.
Lingrong Ma.
Sandra Elizabeth Alfaro.
Sibo Fu.
Georgia Lopez Aparicio. Katie Horribin Wohlers. Dejanique Joseph. Karina Jacob. Kaylin Elizabeth Perez. Alexis Hill.
Congratulations to the Master of Public Administration graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Bachelor of Science in Public Policy degree. Professor of Teaching and Vice Dean for Undergraduate Programs, Grace Bang will join Dean Boone.
Stephanie Herrera.
Kyle Toshie Kylie Chin.
Rafael Castellanos.
Anna Dang Vu.
Lindsay Hausinger.
Paulina Garmute.
Walona Wiafe.
Emily Hope Lim.
Lisbeth Bonilla Waifter.
Alexander Subius.
Kevin Gomez.
Sarina Parsapasant.
Antonio Mungru Wu.
Adam Cesar Olivia.
Ashley Tae Jung.
Jessica Jimenez.
Radet Retta.
Jaya Lee Kaylee.
Alexis Yair Mendiola Morales.
Deborah Ann J. Britton.
John P. Belton.
Chloe Madison Rivas.
Bennett Oates.
Isabella Garcia.
Andrew Michael Teagle Tosolini.
Azaria Makonnen Kabede.
McKenna Moore.
Sarah James.
Elizabeth Shong.
Aishat Tiamiyu.
Aiden Bloomstein.
Adrian Perez.
Jake Jober.
Taylor Johnson.
Brandon Tavakoli.
Jesse Garcia.
Caroline Covert Mater.
Diuthi Chegu.
Caroline Grace Hanna.
Zhuo Yang Hu.
Claire Margaret Oberly.
Zi Chen Tai.
Kelly Blotter.
Navya Devi Chinatuman.
Isabella Hess.
Victoria Jolie DeLeva.
Eden Jock Gower.
Isadora Hester.
Alaska Gomez Mueller.
Laura C.
Eli Goldstein. Alyssa Crystal Arana. Rebecca Corletto. Nayeli Nabil Castillo Correra. Pedra Peter G.
Congratulations to the Bachelor of Science in Public Policy graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Bachelor of Science in Urban Studies and Planning degree. Professor and Chair of the Department of Urban Planning and Spatial Analysis, David Sloan, will rejoin Dean Boone.
Clarissa Avalos.
Andrew Reese McNeil.
Ryan Jesse Zapata.
Katie Giselle Marcio Fernandez.
E. Young Jang.
Nikita Cole.
Ye Jang.
Evelyn Zong.
Le Sean Pan.
Marlene Macias.
Georgina Bravo.
Joshua Morales.
Sydney Yu.
Juan Adrian Serrano.
Congratulations to the Bachelor of Science in Urban Studies and Planning graduates. Dean Boone, I now present to you the candidates for the Bachelor of Science in Real Estate Development degree. Professor and Chair of the Wilbur H. Smith III Department of Real Estate Development, Richard Green, will rejoin Dean Boone.
Sophia Lee.
Avery Roskwitalski.
Joshua D. Kim.
Alex Chung.
Diego Rosales.
Donovan Hernandez.
Justin Len.
Aaron Finch.
Tyrell Frank Elliott Mendez.
Patrick Bradford Barrett.
Alexander Mungia.
Jack Krikorian.
Armin Bedras Ajimian.
Jake Carter.
Curtis Johnson III.
Eric Hubner.
Bodhi Constantine Brand.
Dennis Lynch.
Loris Parash.
Jake Jensen.
Carolina Canas.
Ian Pijot.
Michael Jamondo.
Colin Mobley.
Thomas Liu.
Zane Adam Elgamal.
Kyle Tran. Oscar Yan.
Nicholas Collins.
Curtis Luong.
Mitchell Fry.
Kobe Brukiem.
Jonathan Perez Magana.
Navid Aframinian.
Ryan Hill.
Brayden Beckrad.
Stephanie Siglali Lewis.
Somaz Dian.
Daniel Pinto.
Ari Katan.
Anik Sierra Clark.
Itai Nassim Abupo.
Andrew Reese McNeil.
Marcus Buenaventa.
Angel Bautista.
Dylan Hawley.
Dawson Cole McDonald.
Hunter Steinman.
Charles Paul.
Reason Turk.
Katerina Mary Kochansky.
Phoebe Levy.
Sebastian Rodriguez.
Simone Medizadeh.
Riley Booth.
Aaron Yazdi.
Philip Tran.
Joseph Robinek.
Wei Pyo Ong.
Jordan Lam.
Jade Brewer.
Evan Lyons.
Razan El-Imam.
Juan Pablo Mimiaga.
Ryan Alexandra Hemerick.
Peyton Claire McEwen.
Charlie Levisay.
Stone Goldberg Zashin.
Benjamin Tyler Feldman.
Ethan Ford.
Connor Samuel Cohen.
Jake Ryan Jacoby.
Samuel Bevino.
Nicholas Isaac Starkman. Nicholas S. Samulian.
Garrett Carver.
Aaron Padram Garmazi.
Kalani Elvis Earl Rusher.
Aiden Tate Nussbaum.
Gavin J. Duncan.
Anthony S. Kulhaglu.
Ilias Bay Wang.
Asaf Talasazan.
Grant Hollicott.
Leah Imrani.
Austin Mackenzie Stewart.
Nicole Hakakian.
Brenton Gerhardt.
Ariel Regev.
Will O'Neill.
Kaylin Yasmin Shadpour.
Micah Livingston Look.
And now, Vance Baldwin.
Alexander Kahn.
Julian Alexander To.
Star Flowers Salazar.
Griffin Kubrick Osborne. Batal Michelle Mine. Ethan Shokrian. Cameron Razagi. Luke Korkmaz. Chandler Bridgeford.
Congratulations to the Bachelor of Science in Real Estate Development graduates. This concludes the presentation of the candidates. Please welcome back to the podium Dean Boone.
Okay, I know you just did a lot of standing. We're going to ask all of the graduates to please rise. To the assembled faculty, staff, family, and friends, I now proudly present to you the USC Saul Price School of Public Policy class of 2025. Thanks, this is a fun crowd. I've decided I'm going to stick around just because of all of you. So congratulations to everyone. We really look forward to seeing what lies ahead for you. Please do keep in touch. If not, we'll find you because we all love you. So to our guests, please remain seated for the recessional. But before we do that, thank you, and you say it with me, fight on.